Good day, fellow rockers and moshers. Welcome to the Metal Connection, the connection to all things metal. I'm J-Dub, and today on the show we're doing a really cool top favorite 80s vocal album performances. So this is all going to be a very personalized list. We're all probably going to have very vastly different choices, so it's going to be a really great show we got going on here today. And we're going to start off doing some introductions. So, Dave Witherall, if you want to introduce yourself first.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, so my name's Dave Witherall. It's nice putting some faces to some names. I live in East Coast Canada, Nova Scotia. I've been a metalhead. I'm 48 years old. Been a metalhead for, since I was 13, 14 years old. So long time. And looking forward to seeing your guys' choices and sharing mine.
Cool. And Jody, if you want to go up next here.
Hey, I'm Jody from BC, Canada.
Nice.
And yeah, been a metalhead for a number of years now. Met Jamie through going to lots of concerts, live shows, and yeah, excited to see everyone's picks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be cool stuff. And Big Dog, if you want to go up next here.
Hi, I'm David Biggs. I'm your rock and roll big dog. I'm on the East Coast of the United States of America, and I've been listening to rock and metal for, I don't know, 30 something years and been collecting. So let's do it.
Yeah. All right, cool. And then we'll kind of just lead that into our first picks. Again, I'm not 100% sure if all the guests here have put theirs in order. I know me specifically, I did not put mine in order. This is kind of just my 5 in general favorite vocal album performances of the 80s. So I didn't have mine in a specific order. If you guys have yours in a specific order, that's just an added bonus. So we'll get Witherall up here with his first pick.
Right on, guys. Cool. Yeah, so it was a hard. It wasn't too hard actually picking 5. I mean, what could be said? There's so many great bands from the 80s. 5 is not a lot. So, but I went through my collection and I think I came up with 5 good ones. And they're 5 albums that I spin quite regularly. So I actually picked my vinyl out. So I don't know if it's too dark enough. You guys can see my first pick is Breaking the Chains by Dokken. Right? Don Dokken. What can be said about him? Amazing singer. He's once you hear him singing, you know who it is. He has that very distinct, vibrato voice, kind of operatic a little bit. I first heard Dokken. The first album I heard by them was Under Lock and Key, and I was a fan ever since then. I just kind of collected my albums from there, and exactly. What can be? You guys can weigh in on what your feelings of Don Dokken is. I think he's an amazing singer. Great vocalist. I love his solo work too as well. It's pretty good.
I have all the Dokken albums. I think he's a really good singer.
Yeah.
I like your pick.
Cool. Yeah, I find with this one too, I know Breaking the Chains originally was his it was intended as a solo album for when it first got released. And then this album here is actually like, this cover here is the one we all know. It's kind of a remastered version compared to what the original Breaking the Chains was when he first intended it as a solo album. So that one there, I did hear. I don't own that, but I did hear it. That album was a lot more raw sounding than this. When they remastered this for this version that we all know, that's where his voice and just the sound of Dokken, that distinct sound came, right, for their later albums that we all know and love.
Absolutely, yeah. Dokken was firing on all cylinders in the 80s there.
Yeah.
He was quite a young fella back then, and he's hitting all the high notes and everything. So obviously, spot on pick with that. And Jody, if you want to go up next with your next pick.
Okay, I'm going to go with Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell.
Nice.
Ronnie James Dio. I don't think you get more consistent with the vocalist than him. Yeah, he's got that cool grit kind of sort of sound in his voice. Uh, Amazing songs on this album. And yeah, it was a great introduction for him to come into Black Sabbath after Ozzy's departure. And yeah, consistency is key with Dio. Like, I don't think you can say much more than that. He's pretty solid all around.
I think all his albums from the 80s were vocally amazing. And every album he did in the 80s.
Yeah, I agree. His stuff with Black Sabbath obviously is, there's always that, they always have that, the Black Sabbath people that are the Ozzy people, the Dio people. I mean, Ozzy's Ozzy. He was great with Black Sabbath, obviously, but once Dio came in, it's, I think the band's definitely moved in a different direction.
I even love Tony Martin. I think Tony Martin was one of the great 80s vocalists.
Yeah, Tony was awesome. I agree.
Headless Cross, Eternal Idol.
I love it. Yeah, love that album.
Absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and still even now there's still those guys that cannot accept Sabbath without Ozzy, right? So
yeah.
There's still those guys that just cannot accept it. And then there obviously was a lot of people that did accept it, but that certainly was a hard sell in the beginning when Ozzy did leave and Black Sabbath had to find a new singer. And here you go, they're off and about with a brand new singer, and it was a hard sell for some people. But if you clearly know Dio and his talents, that's not a hard sell at all. So obviously a great pick, spot on with that. And Big Dog, if you want to take her away.
Yeah. So I went in a little bit of a different direction, not so much heavy metal as hard rock. And this is one of my favorite albums, actually, of all time, the first Vinnie Vincent Invasion album. So the lead singer before Mark Slaughter got there was this guy called Robert Fleischman. And he has one of the best falsettos that I've ever heard in my life. This guy, Robert Fleischman. I have listened to this album. Yeah, I've listened to this album hundreds of times in my car on the way to and from work. And, not only is there Vinny's great guitar work, but just, it's a 10 out of 10 in my book. And the vocal work, the guitar work, it just shreds City. And the vocals appropriately match the guitar work. Sky high falsetto, amazing hooks, everything. So vocally, I really love this album. And, and it's a great guitar album too. So that's my first pick.
Great pick. Yeah. Awesome album.
Love Vinny.
Yeah. I love the second album too. Not as good as that one, but it was a great album.
I think when Mark Slaughter is a great vocalist, and I like the Slaughter. When I first got into metal, the Up All Night, that video was one of the first videos I would see on MTV. So that was my introduction to Slaughter. But I think that this first vocalist, Robert Fleischman, was a much better fit for Vinny than Mark was. But
I'd agree.
Yeah, but they're both great albums. Both.
Yeah,
great.
They are. Yeah.
And in terms of timelines, that was just after Kiss?
This was, I think, 86. So it was a few years after Kiss, a couple years after. I think he left maybe in like 83, 84.
Yeah.
And then I guess he spent a couple years putting his band together. And some of these songs are really old, though. Some of these songs have been kicking around since the Warrior days. I have the Warrior demos on CD, and some of these riffs have been kicking around for a while. In very different form, though. Not kind of not as speedy and not as hard. More, just rocky instead of hard rock. But yeah, I highly recommend searching out if you're a big Vinnie Vincent fan, getting those Warrior CDs because they have the demos of a lot of the songs that will go on the first two Invasion albums.
Nice.
Yeah, and I believe there even was that Invasion 2 where there was so much more of those additional demos and bonus tracks and things like that didn't appear on the first album. I'm not super familiar with it, but I know there is that Invasion 1 and Invasion 2, but Invasion 2 is just more of a compilation of sorts. But obviously a good pick on that. And I'll take it away with my next pick. And this was a super hard thing to do, to crunch it down to 5. I think I probably originally had 15, 20 albums pulled out. And I'm like, how the hell am I going to narrow this down to five? Like, this is going to be nearly impossible. And even obviously with 80s, there's just so many talented vocals that it was becoming apparent that I couldn't just like do a, oh well, who's better, who is better talent wise, because they all have great talent. So at that point I started taking a bit of a different approach where I'm like, I'm just going to have to kind of just narrow this down based off uh, like a super fun factor sort of thing, like almost albums that make you feel good when you put it on, where you put it on and you want to sing along and pretend you're a vocalist. So that's kind of the approach I took, although that's kind of more into the back half of my picks. My first couple picks is almost more leading into a almost more of a rawness factor before they perfected their crafts. So my first pick here is the first full length Merciful album,
Beautiful.
Melissa. And this is basically coming out of the 70s era where King Diamond was involved with a Black Rose band, and he had his Black Rose band where before he developed his falsettos, but in the Black Rose and the early Merciful Fate demos, if anybody's heard those kind of things, he was more clean singing, and he was sort of figuring out his falsetto that later came on. And the reason I really kind of focused in on this Melissa album and not maybe a King Diamond solo album, which I was kind of thinking I might lean towards a King Diamond solo album, but the more I started kind of listening to this and realizing that he's kind of doing that perfect balance of singing, but also he is bringing in his falsettos. So I just found this to be a perfect balance of the singing phase, like the singing thing that he kind of got out of later on, and so it's a perfect balance of singing and his high and his falsettos. And a reason probably why I didn't specifically go for a King Diamond solo album is just it's just a little more rawer back here. He is incorporating a much more clean singing with the falsetto, so it's a great combination of the two, as opposed to later on in the King Diamond solos, he was kind of just going super over the top, super outlandish with the falsettos, and he kind of the clean singing took a back seat. So that's why I focused in on this guy.
Great pick.
Yeah. And actually, I was just going to ponder a little question is, obviously, we're all familiar with King Diamond and everything that he's done. So maybe just if anyone wants to chime in, like, do you prefer the Merciful Fate stuff, or do you prefer King Diamond's solo stuff?
I prefer Merciful Fate. Yeah. King Diamond's great, obviously, but Merciful Fate, yeah. That album there that you picked there, that's to me, that's like an ultimate metal album. Yeah. Good choice.
You got the Roadrunner edition too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's something about like King Diamond said that, oh, the Roadrunner is the only real one, and the Megaforce one had some re-recorded bits or some bits that was missing or something like that. I don't know the full specific sort of thing, but something like that, right? Where some bits were missing on one of the songs with the Megaforce release or something like that. Don't quote me on this sort of stuff, but it's kind of riffing it off.
Hey, in my opinion, that one there and Don't Break the Oath, two must-have albums. You got to have those two.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And yeah, we'll move it along here with your next pick, actually.
All right. Okay, cool. All right, this here, my second pick. Again, I didn't pick these five in any specific order. I'm just kind of going through them. But this one here, Jamie will probably recognize this because this is a band that I've been spinning quite a bit lately, and it's some Queensryche. Yeah, had to pick this album, this EP. Amazing. What can be said about it? Jeff Tate, obviously a phenomenal singer, very operatic. When I first heard Queensryche, the first album I heard by them was Operation Mindcrime. Again, that's an amazing album. I kind of, was first album I ever bought from them many years ago, and I kind of went backwards and got all the earlier stuff, which I prefer. Mindcrime is still a great album, but the first three are like top notch albums. The EP, The Warning, and Rage for Order, just amazing albums. This EP here, Queen of the Reich, that track is probably like one of the best tracks Queensryche has ever done, and probably one of the best metal tracks ever, as far as I'm concerned. His voice is just, obviously it's not the same anymore as what it used to be. He's older, and his voice is kind of gone a little bit with age. But yeah, what can be said about it? Amazing, amazing vocalist. Very distinctive voice. When you hear him, especially these older Reich albums, when you hear it, you know who it is. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think that chorus and that song that you mentioned is one of the highest falsettos I've heard too.
Yeah.
It's like glass shattering.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
Now, I know I wasn't around when it came out, but I had heard stories, and even I have the Warning re-release, and there's a big write-up about the early stages of the band. And when that EP hit, they had so much hype behind them. So many people were just hyped on that EP. And leading into that first full-length album, The Warning, they had so much pressure on them to kind of one up the EP, and there was just so much pressure on the guys, and they nailed out the incredible album after The Warning. And that first EP, they had so much hype behind them just based off that EP. So that's an incredible moment that doesn't happen very often.
No. Yeah.
Cool. And Jody, if you want to take her away with your next pick.
My next pick, Jamie's going to help me out because I couldn't find physical copy. It's going to be Manowar's Kings of Metal from 1988. Eric Adams, I think he's an underrated singer. He's got one of the most amazing shrieking screams in metal. You listen to a song like Kingdom Come, and the shrieks or sustained shrieks, screams in that are just incredible. I think the instruments combined with his vocals give the songs a more huge feel to them. Even like a song like Heart of Steel, his subtle melodics in that song are just incredible as well. So that's my next pick. Definite underrated vocalist as far as I'm concerned.
I don't think I've listened to that in a while. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it now.
Yeah, me either. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Great pick. Caught everyone off guard with that.
Yeah.
I'm not the hugest Manowar fan in particular, but I'm obviously, just a kind of a slight enough fan. I got this little box set with the three of them albums in it. I got this little box set with the three of them in there, so that's how I ended up.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
And at this point, this would have been like $10, so it's like, oh, get the three albums for $10, sure. But Manowar has a huge fan base. They've been able to sustain that fan base for back in the early 80s all the way till now. They're still going. So whoever's manning, I'm not sure on the name. I know the guitarist is pretty well the main guy in that band, and it's kept that going. And he's been able to sustain a whole career for 40 years basically. Incredible stuff. Huge fan base, cult band.
Was that Ross the Boss? I think.
Yeah, I'm not deep on my Manowar, so
me either.
I'm not going to pretend like I am, but obviously they're a highly respected band for people that are into it.
Yeah,
cool.
Sorry. Yeah, Manowar is again big band, been around for a long time. Obviously, I'm familiar with them, but it's one band that I actually never really got into. But yeah, it's good pick though.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And Big Dog, if you want to take her away here with your next pick.
So you were talking about before, a lot of your picks, Jamie, were they fun picks, or they're hard hitting, vocals. And a fun pick for me that I was thinking about was Mr. Glenn Hughes. And I saw him live, and this guy is like almost 70. I think he's in his 70s now, but when I saw him, he was not really quite 70 yet, and he can still belt it out. But this is his one of his, not his first solo album. I think it's like his second solo album with Pat Thrall, and his vocals. He's like, you know, like kind of a white soul singer, and he's just got these funky vocals and this cadence, and he just his enunciation is just really cool. It's just very funky, very entertaining. Always, this guy's always entertaining. Whatever he sings, you're gonna notice him, and you're gonna say, "Wow, you know, this guy can really sing. He belt it out." And this album has a lot of cool songs on it that I really love. It's got "I Got Your Number," "The Look in Your Eyes," "Muscle and Blood," stuff that he still actually plays in concert to this day, coast to coast. So it's not really a well-known record. Obviously, he's really well-known with Deep Purple, you know, Burn and Stormbringer and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah,
he was in Trapeze before that. They're kind of an unknown band, hard rock band from the early 70s. But this solo album from 82, this always does it for me. Very funky, very AOR, but he's just his over-the-top vocals just do it for me every time. Love him.
Nice. Yeah, I'm not very familiar with that. Obviously, the Deep Purple stuff, yes. Great vocalist for sure. Yeah, I'll have to check that album out. I didn't know about his solo stuff.
Yeah, he's put out a lot of solo albums, especially lately, since the mid '90s. That's when I became a fan in the mid '90s. Right. And he's put out so many different albums. Yeah, he's great. Great singer. Great live too.
Yeah, Burn is one of my favorite Purple albums too. So
it's one of my top favorite Purple albums too. And I even like Stormbringer. I know a lot of people don't.
Yeah,
like
Stormbringer is good. Yeah,
I do like Stormbringer.
Yeah,
the Coverdale.
Pick.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that guy's been in a million projects. You couldn't even be able to touch on or even know all the projects he's been involved in his career. Just a ton of projects. You're probably familiar with a lot of his projects, but yeah, that's 82. It's not something I'm super familiar with, and I definitely want to check that out for sure. It's definitely something I'm slipping on. I don't know about. And I knew you were going to come in with some obscure picks, so that's great. You know, to give viewers a different stuff as opposed to just all the standard bands that we already know. Most of my list is pretty well mainstream, if you'd call it mainstream. But at that point, it's just because they're freaking fun and you just want to sing along and have a good time. And so my next pick is I'm not quite yet in the super feel good, having a good time yet. I'm still kind of in that. My next pick is still going to lean towards this rawness factor, even though he was getting it together. So my next pick is going to be Accept. And you know, even right now, this might not be my favorite Accept album per se. But when I was just listening back to the vocals, he is just roaring and shrieking on this. And again, it's coming out of that 70s era, 70s phase where, you know, they Accept had their first album in 79. They had that I'm a Rebel in 1980. And at that point, Udo still hadn't figured out fully what he was doing with his vocals. So I think it was one of those things on I'm a Rebel. He totally hadn't figured out his singing, his own unique style at that point, and he was still in that hard rock phase, you know. And I know he tried to write some songs for AC/DC and things like that. So I think at that point with Breaker, he just said, screw it. I'm going all out. I'm going over the top, outlandish, and this is where it began with the super over the top vocals and shrieking and screaming. And that's why I focused in on something like this, because on the later albums, you know, Metal Heart, Balls to the Wall, things like that, he kind of refined he didn't refine his shrieking, but he knew what he was doing at that point. He fully knew what he was doing. So on this Breaker, it's kind of just, he just says, screw it, screw this AC/DC stuff I'm trying to copy. I'm just going over the top, and this is over the top stuff. And even though kind of in the middle of the pack, there's a beautiful slower type song. I actually made a little note on that. The Can't Stand the Night. That is one hell of a performance on there. A slower tune, but that's one hell of a performance there. Can't Stand the Night amongst all the rocker tracks. So I definitely had to make note of that one to touch on that. It's a great slower jam. Yeah, and that's why I focused on this one. It's just a little bit more raw than the later Accept albums when he knew what he was doing and he knew how to sing and all these things. This time he just said, "Screw it, I'm going over the top." And right from the get go, that opening Starlight song, it was apparent he's going over the top here, and I love it. Great, great.
It's also a great album to play guitar to if you want to try to learn some Accept riffs. I've sat down with that album a lot and I learned the riffs off that CD is really good.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
so over the top, screaming everything.
Jamie Bud, awesome pick.
Yeah, cool.
That Breaker is actually my favorite Accept album. Yeah, followed by Balls to the Wall. So yeah, great pick. I found with Breaker, you're right. It is a little. It's obviously Balls to the Wall, and Forward. Obviously, their sound was more refined. But with Breaker, that's where they developed that signature Accept sound. Yeah, it just not just vocally, even musically, like musically and the vocals, obviously. That's where that Accept sound came into effect. I found with I mean, the debut and I'm a Rebel, like I don't know, just they're great albums, but it was just more of a 70. Not I love 70s, but it was more of a 70s vibe, right? With it, a little bit of 80s in there, but definitely as soon as Breaker came out, yeah, they developed their sound. They started to, and obviously it evolved from there into what we all know. But yeah, great pick, man. That's my favorite Accept album. So right on.
Yeah, and
Love
like
that.
and like I even was intending like in my head I was like I'm probably going to pick Metal Heart, but as
Yeah,
I'm listening back and
yeah,
at that point they kind of adopted a lot more gang vocals and things like
yeah,
that. Even though Udo was still a great singer, I
yeah.
love all. That's why I had to get Udo on this list no matter what because Udo is
Right,
one of my top singers. I had to get Udo on this list, and
yeah,
I thought I was going to lean towards Metal Heart or something like that, or
right.
but there's just more gang vocals, and at this point,
Yeah,
Breaker, he's just over the top, screaming, shrieking,
I
everything.
agree. Yeah, great pick.
And there's probably less gang vocals. Wolf doing his gang vocals later on. So, yeah, absolutely. And Dave, if you want to continue on with your next pick
Sure.
here.
All right. Cool. All right. Next pick, I got Metal Church, The Blessing, Blessing in Disguise. Love this album. Yeah, I tried to pick a little heavier one. I had a lot of heavy stuff in my collection. I wanted to pick at least one heavy stuff in there, right? So, um, yeah. So Metal Church, Blessing in Disguise. This was the first album that I've ever heard by Metal Church, so that made me an instant fan, obviously, and I collected from there. Mike Howe, that's when he came into the band. I mean, may rest in peace. The guy's gone now, sadly. But yeah, what a voice! His voice definitely fit that band. He's got that very powerful kind of raspy voice. To fit the fit the thrash metal vibe that Metal Church is known for. Um, yeah, powerful singer. Just I love his vocals. And I mean, how can you not like tracks like Badlands? Badlands was actually the very first song I ever heard by them. And man, I could just listen to that track over and over and over. Yeah. Great vocalist. Great band.
That might have been the first Metal Church album that I heard too.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
It was
someone
mine.
gave it to me on tape, and I heard I'm like, this is pretty heavy.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I had bought that one and the dark. Got the dark after that. So
Human Factor. I think I got
yeah,
Human Factor too.
yeah. I had Human Factor is great too. Yeah,
His
So,
vibe was slightly different than the previous singer, David Wayne. In
yeah,
the
yeah,
Dark album, and his vibe was just slightly different in a sense that I think it gave the band more, maybe not more options, but it kind of just gave them more confidence to maybe get a little more longer songs in and things like that.
yeah.
I think some of the songs are a little bit longer than the previous albums, so
Right.
that was probably definitely probably influential in that part,
Yeah,
uh, adding his own touches to it, so to speak.
yeah. And his touch compared to David Wayne, his I mean, David Wayne was great. Don't get me wrong, but Mike Howe, he had his voice is a little more raspy, I guess. Just a little more powerful than Davies was. I think he fit the band very well. It's unfortunate what happened, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's my next pick.
Yeah, even when Mike Howe passed, yeah, I actually couldn't even listen to Metal Church for a couple of weeks, even a month, because
Yeah,
I just like couldn't believe that he did that, or if he did that to
yeah,
himself, or whatever. But I just couldn't believe it, and it was really
yeah,
hard listening to Metal Church for the month after, or a couple of weeks after. I just couldn't even do it
yeah.
for.
Same here.
It was hard. And not to continue on with the downer here, but and then Jody, if you want to go up with your next pick, bring her back up.
Well, I went super mainstream with this one. Uh, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction, 1987. Um, Axel had such a unique voice that we had never heard up to that point. Anything like it. It's kind of like Ozzy coming in or Lemmy. You hear those voices on the radio, and you instantly know who it is. And Axel's that way. Uh, he's got those high vocals. He can do stuff that's mellow, like uh, Paradise City, and then go all out rocking with like Welcome to the Jungle and just tear it right up. And this album's got my favorite song, period, on it, and that's Rocket Queen. I love how that song, it's all over the map too. It's got the rockin' parts, and then it's got the soft part in it. Yeah, just covers all bases. Yeah, I think Axl Rose in 1987 was where it was at for that.
I'm so happy that showed up on the list because I was actually just kind of ranking out albums for like honorable mentions that we do at the end, and I wanted to pull out that Guns N' Roses for sure. And so I'm glad that I didn't even have to, and someone else took care of it for me at that point. So
Yeah, I actually had that album in my hand. I was going to pick that one too. Yeah,
It is a great
yeah.
album.
Oh yeah, he was full energy. He was a super intense guy. Obviously, people know the seeing clips of him jumping in the crowd and creating all sorts of drama and commotion, and that just kind of went along with the whole vibe and the tunes, and kind of just it gave them more of a mystique, so to speak. And yeah, and at this point, anybody watching is probably familiar with Guns N' Roses, so
yeah,
it's kind of no surprises here about the band or anything like that. And yeah, Axl Rose definitely had it all going on back then.
yeah. Appetite was probably one of the third or fourth hard rock metal albums I ever bought back, and I bought it upon its release in '87. Great album. That and Hysteria. Those are the two big albums when they first came out. Hysteria and Appetite. Huge albums, both of
Yeah, I
them.
think that was both 87.
Yeah,
I remember.
yeah, both. Yeah, it was kind of like a little bit of a war between them two. So who was the bigger band at the time? Yeah, great pick, man.
Thanks.
And Big Dog, if you want to go up next here.
Yeah, so when I think about singers in the 80s, I think about, how do they move me? Do they, when they sing, like Jamie said, do I want to sing along with them? And this guy, I always want to sing along with him, even though I can never get even close to his vocals, the quality. Steve Marriott from Humble Pie, and this one is all the way back from 1981. This is the reformed Humble Pie. They broke up in the 70s and they reformed with some other guys. But Steve Marriott is the main guy. He's the vocalist, obviously, and he also plays guitar. He plays a really mean guitar, let me tell you. And his vocals are just amazing. Probably one of the best rock and roll frontmen of all time. And not a lot of metal guys really know about Humble Pie, but it's not metal; it's more hard rock. But this album from '81, he covers Elvis, and he just puts Elvis to shame. He covers "All Shook Up" is the first song on this album, and that cover is so heavy. It's like almost like a heavy metal cover of Elvis, and he just takes what Elvis did and he just turns it into something super heavy and just blows my mind. And he does "Chip Away at the Stone," which a lot of people know from Aerosmith. Aerosmith did it, I think, in the mid '70s. It's actually, I think, a cover from Richie Supa. He's the original writer, but he covers this, and I think this version of Chip Away the Stone is the definitive version. It blows away Aerosmith's version. This Steve Marriott, the vocalist, he blows away Steven Tyler. A lot of guys cite him as their influence for singing. Tragically, he died in '91. So, it's kind of a big loss, but this album is one of my favorite albums from the 80s. And I just love Steve Marriott, everything he does. Humble Pie from the 60s, 70s, and the 80s. This is one of their last records. Really cool.
Nice. Cool. I'm not very familiar with that. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. He just wails. He just wails. He's got the combination of he can play guitar. He's like the perfect triple threat. He can play guitar, he can sing his lungs out, and he can he can write, and he's a showman. He was like the perfect package. So if you ever get a chance to see any of the live DVDs with Humble Pie, this guy's just amazing.
Cool.
Love Steve. And I did briefly just hear that they didn't have too many albums after that one.
No, this is one of the last ones. I think this might actually be the last one. There was 2 albums with the reformed Humble Pie in the 80s. I think the other one, the first one may have been called On to Victory. This one's is Go for the Throat. This one might have been the last Humble Pie studio album, the official one. And the bulk of their albums were from the 70s and the late 60s. But his vocals still held up. Even in '91, I have bootleg stuff from '91 before he died in the early '90s when he did a lot of club shows, and his vocals still held up. Guy was great.
And I would have to assume I'm not familiar with that, to be honest. So I would assume if that's '81, that's probably leaning towards a hard rock sort of ish.
Yep. Yeah. Hard rock. Yeah. Definitely not, metal as we know it. It's not like Halloween or anything like that. But his vocals are very, very distinctive. And whenever you hear him sing a song, you know exactly who it is. After maybe like the first 2 notes, you know who it is. That distinctive. One of the all-time top rock and roll frontmen of all time. I urge everybody to check him out. And Steve Marriott, awesome guy.
Yeah.
Busting out the obscurity gems here, which I knew. I figured you figure some obscure gems to come out of you. So,
I am your rock and roll big dog.
All right, cool. And and this is kind of cool because I didn't put them in order, but I kind of separated. My first 2 were more of early raw point in their career, and my next 3 albums are all just based off the fun factor, a feel good thing. If you're having a downer day, or if your mood's not high or energy's low, my next 3 albums in particular are all super high energy, bring the energy up, make you feel good, make you sing along. So going along with that is the first Armored Saint album, March Saint. And right from the get-go here, the first opening riff, the first opening couple lines that John Bush says it's very apparent that right off the get-go, this is going to be a super fun, good time, basically. And just super fun stuff that you want to sing along and raise your fist to and have a good time. Seducer, you chant along with all these songs. And John Bush kind of is a great all-around vocalist where he can hit some high notes, he can sing great, and he can carry a good little cadence and tunes and things like that. And yeah, it's just super fun stuff that, again, this is not like maybe they don't take themselves super seriously. Like the mood's not serious. It's all kind of upbeat, happy, not happy, but kind of upbeat, good, uplifting kind of stuff. Obviously with the front cover, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into, and kind of much like a Man-O-War type thing where they're touching on these historical type events and things like that. But again, they don't take themselves overly seriously. It's just a super fun time that when I put this on, I want to sing along or pretend I'm singing along with John Bush on basically every note. So super fun factor here going along with that. And one of the standout tracks that I love here is Seducer.
Is that the one with Can You Deliver on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw them in concert opening up for Saxon. They were pretty good.
What year was that?
2015.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, John Bush is one guy I always wanted to see live, and I never have yet. Obviously, at this point, obviously his voice is a little older, but he's still a decent, commendable guy at this point. And I know had this been in the '90s, if this was a '90s edition, I definitely would have got Symbol of Salvation on there. I know that symbol of salvation was super personal to him, and a lot of emotions and things like that are coming out in Symbol of Salvation. So Symbol of Salvation would have made my cut had this been the '80s. And John Bush is one of my favorite singers, so I got to get him in there. And I love all the '80s stuff, although the one Delirious is not super incredible. It's good, but definitely Raising Fear and March of the Saint is top fun factor stuff.
Great pick.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, love that album. Can you deliver? Love that track.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's one of the notable tracks. Actually, I think that's the first album I ever heard from them. Was that one there? And I remember that track. Can you deliver? Great. And you're right, John Bush, awesome singer. Obviously, he released his seminal albums with Anthrax, which I love. Love the John Bush Anthrax albums.
that's another thing, just like the Black Sabbath thing, where some people couldn't get over when they made that the singer switch with Anthrax when
Yeah,
Joey Belladonna left and
yeah,
John Bush stepped in. I know some people just could not accept it. Obviously,
well,
it was a different era. It was '90s. The
yeah,
music did change into a more of a groovy,
yeah.
but yeah, here nor there. It's not we're not doing a full on John Bush or Armored Saint Anthrax ranking, so we'll save that for another day. Super deep discussion later.
Yeah,
And Witherall, if you want to go up with your next pick.
yeah, sure. All right. This one will probably be a short discussion again because that was my next pick.
Nice.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Had to choose the heaven and hell. Again, we already talked about it. Ronnie James Dio. What can we say? What else can we say? Man's a legend.
oh,
Very distinct voice. I could have went with any of his solo albums. I was going to pick probably um, oh geez, any of the solo albums really. But I decided to go with that Black Sabbath one. That Heaven and Hell to me, that's again, you know, we've already mentioned about Ozzy and Black Sabbath, but that Heaven and Hell, that to me, that is a not only one of the best Black Sabbath releases, but just one of the best Dio releases, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, so that's all I have to say about it. I know it was already picked, but if anybody has any other opinions on it,
Yeah, that and Mob Rules are some of the
oh
best
yeah,
metal albums ever.
they are. Yeah,
And that Mob Rules track is my actually one of my favorite Black Sabbath tracks of all time.
great
Yeah,
album.
that riff and his vocals and his lyrics. A lot of people don't understand how great of a lyric writer Ronnie was.
Yeah, I'd say Dream Evil is probably my favorite solo album, but and I was going to pick that one, but I decided to go with the Sabbath.
Nice.
Yeah, and naturally doing an '80s top favorite '80s vocalist show, that I did have some Dio albums and Black Sabbath picked out, and
Yeah,
there's just one of those things where uh, the mood goes up and down with Dio, right? Like he's
yeah,
more in his fantasy modes, and it kind of takes you on a ride. So I think just based on that factor, I did leave him out of my top five. Again, this is extremely difficult to only do five, so I
yeah,
just have to leave him out just for the fact that maybe he's not a full-on fun time. Well, he's obviously fun time, but he's not a full-on fun time with like some of my other picks to me personally,
yeah,
because he's more of an up or down, take you on a fantasy type ride, so to speak. So
yeah,
I ended up kind of going in a different direction with I just wanted albums that are super fun that I want to sing along
yeah,
with, sort of thing. And obviously that is still a fun time. They sing along and things like that. But yeah, obviously a great pick. And Jody, if you want to go ahead next.
okay. My next pick, one of my favorite albums in my teenage years, um, going with Living Colors Vivid.
Oh, okay.
nice.
Uh, Corey Glover, man, awesome vocal range. I don't think they could have had a better vocalist for portraying the emotions of the songs on this album. Like Open Letter to a Landlord, just such an emotional song, and his vocals take you there. Desperate People, one of my favorite songs on the album. It's got that awesome grit to start and then goes more melodic in the middle of the song and then back to grit again. It's so cool what he can do with his vocals. I think he's another underrated vocalist, really. Live, the guy hits it just as good as he does on album. So that one's my pick.
I was not expecting that. That's a great pick.
Thanks.
Love it. Love it.
Super clean singer. But I seen Living Color open for Aerosmith years back, 2015, I believe that was. But yeah, so Living Color still going away here and still doing the shows. And Aerosmith gave him an opening slot, even though they don't really need the spotlight, so to speak. But it's still cool of Aerosmith to do that and keep them in the spotlight, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask. I thought you were going to mention the song, but is that the album with Cult of Personality on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got. I just left that one off because everybody knows that song. But yeah,
that song still as powerful now as it was when it was first released. And whenever I hear it on the radio, and I hear his vocals and the guitar, it's a very powerful song. It still stands the test of time.
Yeah, like I say, Corey Glover's vocals for those songs, they just the perfect match for showing the emotions.
Yeah, agreed.
Definitely an interesting pick, cool pick. It's not super mainstream, so we're probably definitely not expecting that. So that's cool, rather than just supposed to doing the kind of same old ones here. So that's a cool little different personal pick to you. So that's great. That's why we're all here, to get super personal with these picks. And so, Big Dog, if you want to take her away with your next pick.
All right. So this is an album that I've been listening to in my car a lot lately, and that coincidentally happens to be my second favorite album of all time. Now, I don't know if anybody knows. You probably heard of these guys, but people don't really know this album, and it's Diamond Head, Canterbury, from 83, yeah. So I have multiple copies of this on CD and on vinyl. So the vocalist is Sean Harris, and this guy can sing. I mean, a lot of people, Diamond Head was one of the first new wave of British heavy metal bands. They're known for that movement, and a lot of guys try to copy his cadence. And if you listen to the first Metallica album, Kill 'Em All, right? It doesn't sound anything like Sean Harris, but I heard demos of the Kill 'Em All where James Hetfield tried to copy his vocal cadence, and the songs sound totally different. This is more of a hard rock. This is this is the band that did Am I Evil and the Prince, and Metallica did those famously. So that's how I first got into Diamond Head, was through Metallica, which a lot of people probably did. But this album is kind of like a medieval concept masterpiece. It's got a lot of slower tracks. There's a lot of acoustic guitar. Just the hooks on it are amazing, and his vocals they just blow me away every time. And the hooks on the songs, you just sing them in your car. There's a lot of whoa stuff that you can just sing, and it makes you happy. So I love this album. Probably my second favorite album of all time. Canterbury, Diamond Head.
Did any of the bigger songs that they were known for make on that album?
No, there's none of the songs that Metallica didn't cover any of these songs. Nope, there's no Am I Evil, there's no Prince. Those were all on different albums. What was the other one? Helpless. Helpless wasn't on this album either. Those are the three big ones that Metallica covered. Everybody knows Am I Evil.
Yeah.
I think that was from Behold the Beginning, or it's the one with the guy in the castle. I forgot. Oh, Borrow Time. That was from Borrow Time. So that I think was the album before this. This was they broke up after this album.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a kind of a commercial, more commercial sound, more AOR, but it's awesome. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that album. Obviously familiar with Diamond Head, legendary band for sure. Yeah, I'll have to check that album out.
Yeah, that album got derided a lot by a lot of people. You know, they said they didn't follow their original sound, and a lot of people lost faith in them after that. But I think it's a wonderful album, and I love it. It's different. I like when bands go in different directions, not necessarily commercial, but just different directions to, increase the, change their style up a little bit. Not necessarily become more AOR or more commercial, but just change their style to keep things fresh. I love that when bands do that.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, I know me. I just recently got their album when Sean Harris returned to the group in '93, that Death in Progress album, and
Awesome.
I really love that Death in Progress album too. Super. It's like, again, it's not like metal per se. It's more like hard rock in general, but yeah, super melodic, great choruses, super catchy stuff. It's one of those things where you just kind of play it a few times and it's like, oh wow, this is super catchy, super great stuff. So I recently just hauled in that Death in Progress album here a couple weeks, month ago, sort of thing. So I've been listening to that album lots.
That's a great album. I listen to that one all the time. It's got one of my favorite ballads on it. I don't know if you remember the song. It's called Run. It's one of the best ballads I've ever heard.
Yeah, cool stuff. And I guess I'll go with my next pick. And again, just super fun. This is going to be a super popular album, and for a reason. Sabotage, Hall the Mountain King. And yeah, what can you say about this? This is John Oliva, just all out, over the top, shrieking and screams all over this album. Right from the opening, we got a little haunting riff, and then John Oliva just bursts out with these over the top, outlandish screams and shrieks and just all sorts of stuff. Super unique talent and vocals for the time. Super unique stuff. And yeah, this is pretty well, just like the whole album is pretty well like a greatest hits, if you would call it that. There's not a single skipper on this track, and it's just track after track, incredible, dynamic vocals. And obviously I touch on the brothers, John and Chris Oliva. Chris Oliva has since passed, but there's probably one of those, like, a deep connection with the brothers making music, and that's why this stuff was just hitting on all cylinders. And yeah, John Oliva is just super outlandish, unique vocalist. I don't know what more I could say other than doing a full-on album review of it and take up 20 minutes. But yeah, just these outlandish shrieks and screams that basically no one had ever really heard at that point. Maybe we'd heard some stuff like that, but the shrieking and screaming that he was doing is super unique. Like when you put on a Sabotage album, it's him.
Yeah. Great album, great pick.
And like even the opening, the title track, Hall the Mountain King, that's got to be one of the best 80s songs ever of all time, or even one of the best metal songs of all time. The title track, Hall the Mountain King, in itself.
Yeah, I agree. That's the first album I heard by them, first track I heard by them. Yeah. Great band.
Yeah, I love it. I kind of tune out a bit when the Zach Taylor, or Zach, I don't know his last name, his name's slipping mind, but later Chris Oliva took a little break from the band and just did keyboards and background guitars and let another vocalist come in. And I kind of checked out a little bit with that Zach guy, even though he's still a commendable guy. And then John Oliva took the helms back with the very last album they ever did, Poets and Madman. I love that album.
Okay. Yeah.
Madman is a brilliant album too. So
yeah, I'm not too over familiar with Savage's later albums, only the earlier albums.
Oh yeah. Oh, I was going to just touch on, like, if anyone's watching, or you or whoever in general, definitely check out Poets and Madman. That's a brilliant album. Along with
I kind of like Fight for the Rock.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I like that album.
Well, and like there's a lot of this fan content on YouTube right now, and a lot of people are doing these 10 worst albums that they own in their collection. I've seen that Fight for the Rock show up on a few people's worst album, and I'm like, worst album? No way. Are you
Yeah, that's a great album.
Just wait for my last pick. That's gonna
like,
show up on everybody's worst album.
like, there's no way Fight for the Rock is bad. Like, sure, it might not be a full-on metal of what you were expecting, but if you give it a chance and give it a few run-throughs, there's definitely lots of cool stuff going on throughout that Fight for the Rock album.
Yeah, what was their other album, earlier one? Power and Night?
Oh yeah,
Great. Yeah, great album. Phenomenal. But
I
that one
gotta
there,
check a look
great
at
pick,
all the
man.
Sabotage stuff.
yeah.
I haven't heard that stuff in years.
Oh wow, yeah. Well, you probably definitely remember Hall of Mountain King, and yeah, this is still a super popular album. It's still super
It
popular.
is, yeah.
I did just want to touch on that. If people did check out with the band, check out Poets and Madman, the last album they ever did officially release it. There is some great material on that. And we'll continue it on with Witherall's next pick, and I believe this is all our last picks now.
Yeah.
Our last picks. So even though it's not in order, I'm sure we saved the juicy last.
Yeah, actually, no, this is a great album. Actually, to be honest with you, my number one pick that I had of all of them was probably the Heaven and Hell. That's one of my favorite albums, but this album's pretty damn good. Grim Reaper. Yeah, See You in Hell. Love this album. Again, this was the first album I ever heard by the band. Made me a fan. And I started collecting them from there. They haven't released very many albums anyways, but I have them all. Steve Grimmett, what can be said about the man? This band was one of those bands that, yeah, exactly. They had a large following, but they also had people that couldn't stand the band for some reason. I don't know what the reason behind it was. Maybe it was the vocals. I did hear some people didn't like the vocals. Me personally, I loved his vocals. He had that, kind of a little bit of operatic vocal range, high vocal range, obviously. Then he did a short stint with Onslaught there, which Onslaught, amazing band, right? Released a killer album with them. And I don't know if any of you guys love that album, man. Yeah, great album.
You got them all.
Yeah, I don't. I have them all on vinyl. I don't know if you guys have heard of one band that he was with there for a little bit, Chateau. Anybody hear that?
I'm not super familiar with it, but I was kind of.
Chateau was an early 80s new wave of British heavy metal band.
Yeah, I have them.
And I can't remember the name of the album that he sang with, but he did one album with them. Check them out. They're very well. Actually, hold on one second there. Yeah, Chateau. I think it was Chained and Desperate was the album that he was sang on. Yeah, it's pretty good. Just check it out.
Yeah, I think even that was 84, so that would have been just before he did Green Reaper. Or
yeah.
Or he might have done two albums at the same time, sort of thing. But,
I think it was around the same time when he joined the band that he sang on there. He wasn't a part of the band. He just said he just did vocals for that one album, but he wasn't actually a part of the band, I guess. But it was a great band. But yeah, anyways, enough with that band. Grim Reaper. Yeah, love them. Love this album.
Not enough with that band, because I am so glad that he got picked, because sacrilege here. I left him out of my list, even though he's one of my favorite singers of all time. And it was so difficult to leave him out of this list, just because the only reason I left him out of mine is because I anticipate doing a 90s down the road. And not to give anything away, but I'm telling you, when we do the 90s show, he's making my 90s list. I'm not going to give away the specific album, even though at that point he was involved in stuff in the 90s, so it's kind of quite clear what I might be picking for a 90s show. But I'm saving my Steve Grimmett pick for a 90s show in particular. So I'm super happy that someone else took care of that for me, because I don't have to feel bad not picking him now.
He was making my list. I love Steve Grimmett. Awesome.
much along with Jody making his Guns N' Roses pick. Like, I'm glad you picked that, so I don't have to feel bad for not picking that. And I think there was another one. There was another one that I had in my honorable mentions that someone else already picked. The Black Sabbath, but I forget which one right now off the top of my head. But I have my honorable mention stack right here, ready to go for the after show. And some people have already made the picks that I had in my honorable mentions picks, so that's just going right along with everything. So yeah, super happy that Steve Grimmett did get mentioned, because it'd be sacrilege if we didn't mention Steve Grimmett here.
Yeah.
So I don't have to feel bad that I didn't pick him because he did. So that is perfect.
Amazing vocalist.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's great that you did mention that Onslaught. I know it was quite a change for Onslaught with the vocals going from like a blackened ish vocals, and then switching over to high pitched stuff, and it's quite a thing to digest. But once you do get over that and you realize that Steve Grimmett's a good, talented guy, it's like, holy Jesus, this is one hell of an album.
Yeah.
In Search of Sanity, love that album. I know.
Yes, great album, phenomenal.
And yeah, a great pick here. So Jody here, we'll get you your last pick.
My last pick, I had to go with my favorite vocalist of all time from my favorite band, the Metal God, Judas Priest. It's not my favorite album by them in the 80s, but I figured this one best showed his vocal range, starting off with the lead track of Freewheel Burning. I mean, that one could get an auctioneer tongue-tied. Like, the cadence of that vocals are so fast in spots. And he just nails it and throws screams in, no problem. The man, he's a legend for that reason. He can do it all. Like songs like Rock Hard, Ride Free, The Sentinel, they're totally in his wheelhouse. They'd probably be difficult for a lot of vocalists, but he just hits them like nothing, and then throws those high-pitched screams in there. And yeah, the man can do anything. What's incredible to me, they always say him live doesn't even warm up. He just goes out there and rips it. It's incredible to me.
Great pick.
God's gift was given to him with his vocals.
Well, and you did just mention him live briefly, so I will pose the question to you guys. Did any of you see Halford in the 80s when he kind of was more in his prime?
No.
Saw
them in 2005.
Oh, right on. Cool.
That was my first year seeing them on Ozfest.
Yeah, I actually have, I still have the ticket, actually. I had the ticket to see him in, it was actually the beginning of this month. They were playing with Sabaton, but obviously that emergency happened there with Richie there. So the concert got canceled. So I was a little disappointed, but I mean, his health is more important.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, lucky with Richie on that one.
Yeah, I find it kind of, that was a strange one. 41 years old, and he's the one that had the heart issue, and all the other guys were like, 70. And the youngest guy had the medical issue. Yeah, it's a shame. I was looking forward to seeing them, but maybe next year. I heard a rumor that, fingers crossed, that it might be Priest and Maiden together.
That'd be awesome.
So, that would be an ultimate show if that happens.
I think everybody's been hearing those rumors for 10, hoping that's a rumor for the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah, hopefully.
That is another album and singer that I was this close to putting in my list, and I was just assuming or guessing off the top of my head that someone else has got to pick Halford here, because if I don't pick him and no one else does, I'm gonna feel terrible. for not mentioning Halford on the show would be sacrilege. So again, it's one of those things where I was just praying that someone else is going to take care of this for me, so to speak, so I can fit someone else on my list. So it was just one of those things. I actually did have Defenders of the Faith, pretty well tuned in on my list, and I was just like, I gotta assume or hope that someone else is going to mention Rob Halford, because I wouldn't want to feel terrible leaving him out of the show.
That's a great pick, Jody, man. Priest is my number 2 band. Maiden being my first.
Yep.
And Maiden and Priest, man, all the way. And neither of them made the pick for top 5, but
yeah, I'd have to turn in my fan card for Priest if I didn't pick Halford.
Yeah.
I think we all would if we wouldn't even mention, if we weren't to mention Halford on the show, we would all just be packing it in at that point. I forgot I was going to chime in with something else, but yeah, okay, great. We'll get on with Dave. Big Dog's the last pick.
Yeah, so I purposely, when I was making my picks, I purposely tried to pick stuff that people wouldn't really know about, just so I can kind of illuminate them about new vocal or different vocalists and different bands from the past. And I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this pick, but honestly, it is one of my favorite albums of all time. But I know even the band hates this album. In fact, they disavow this album, as do many fans. And the vocal performance to me is amazing. I love it. And Celtic Frost, Cold Lake. Love it. Celtic Frost, black metal giants. They went kind of glammy in '88.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't like it. These are the guys that did Morbid Tales. These are the guys that did Into the Pandemonium, the guys that did To Megatherion. And every album had its own, flavor, distinct flavor. This one was a little glammy. I actually consider this the first and only, I think, black metal glam album there ever was. And I mean, you can just tell by the song titles. You've got, Seduce Me Tonight, Petty Obsession, Juices Like Wine, Little Velvet. I mean, it's glam.
Yeah.
It's glam metal titles, but when you listen to the record, it's heavy. There's heavy riffs, and Tom's singing is, I call it sick man vocals. He's not like doing the To Megatherion vocals where it's just roaring. He doesn't roar on this album. It's more of a sick man vocal where he sounds like he's got maybe like a cold or something. But I love this album. I love the riffs and his vocal performance. To me, I sing along with every song on here. There's hooks, which is one of the biggest things I look for. Choruses are awesome. And, even the band hates this album. And Tom will not even, I'm sure if I went up to him and asked him to sign it, he would take it and probably rip it apart. I would throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're ever going to see a remaster. I have this album on LP and I have a couple on CD. This I had a long time ago. I paid $8 for this one. This was probably 20 years ago. I don't think you can get it for $8 anymore.
No.
And
that's a great pick, man.
Score on that. I was going to say, great collection piece for the collection. I know I've been trying to get that album, for the last couple of years, and unless you are willing to pay a little bit of big bucks for it, that is a very hard album to get nowadays. So that's a great piece for the collection there that you got there and show as well. And to touch on the vocals, it's almost like he on purposely was trying to be sloppy. Like he was just like really being sloppy about it, almost on purpose. I don't know why, but that is a super interesting album. The music is heavy, and the vocals are a little hard to digest. Almost be like, it is even hard to describe what's going on with the vocals there. So
he sounds sick. He sounds like he's got the flu or something.
Yeah,
and it's almost like sloppy. He's like almost sloppy, but he's doing it on purpose, obviously. So he's just a weird little phase he was in there. As you were saying, every album was different. That Into the Pandemonium, he was getting into some avant-garde stuff, and then the album before was just pure on, black thrash, death thrash sort of thing. So every album he was kind of just doing something a little bit different, and then brought her back in a little bit with the next album, not Mental Vortex. I'm getting confused with Corner. I always do that. I always get the two bands confused there. But what was the album that came after?
After Cold Lake.
Yeah.
That was geez, I don't remember the name of it. I can
Yeah,
see it.
I want to say Mental Vortex, but that's Corner.
Cor-
I just get the two confused, but because they both came out in the '91, so I just get the two confused. But yeah, that's probably an oddity pick for sure.
I think it was Vanity Nemesis.
Right? Yeah.
Vanity Nemesis, which was a return to form, but by then they'd lost all their fans because of Cold Lake. But Vanity Nemesis is a very, very heavy album, and he goes back to the old style vocals, but he does incorporate, if you listen very carefully, he does incorporate some of these vocals on Vanity Nemesis, some of the songs towards the end. Yeah. Like they were kind of like maybe outtakes from the Cold Lake album, and he just kind of retooled them and slapped them on Vanity Nemesis, which is a great album too. I love it. I love all the Celtic Frost records. They're all so different, and Tom is an amazing guitarist, black metal innovator. Just, Morbid Tales, a lot of people cite that album as one of the best albums of all time. And To Megatherion. In fact, To Megatherion was my introduction into Celtic Frost, and
mine too.
Went back and I got all their other albums, and with each album, my mind was blown because I'm like, how can one band sound so different from album to album?
Yeah,
it all worked.
Yeah,
but Cold Lake is my favorite album by Celtic Frost. A lot of people are going to disagree, but I don't care. It's fine.
No, it's fine, man. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely a great album.
Yeah, and it's funny that Tom will disavow that record. He will not even acknowledge its presence, which is it's terrible because it's a great record. It's a nice piece.
It is, yeah.
Great.
Still, even now, that album is super polarizing. I know I can pretty well just assume that when you brought that album up to show, anyone watching was just like, what the hell? Because again, it's one of those things where you either like it or you just absolutely despise it. So even till this day, that is a super polarizing album.
I like it. Thumbs up for me.
I dig it. I actually like it. There is a charm to it because it's heavy. The vocals are completely different. He is
fun. It's a fun record.
It's almost like the world's first ever glam black album.
Yeah.
And it's got a charm to it.
I mean, they're not taking themselves seriously on that album, and they know it. It's like, they planned it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too because I'm a huge fan of glam. So, yeah, great album. It's a good pick.
Thank you.
And saving my juicy one for the last here. I super love this album, and it's kind of interesting that I believe Black Sabbath has made its way to almost everyone's list at this point. Or I know that Dave and Jody has picked Black Sabbath, so mine's taking a little bit different route. It's not the Ozzy, it's not the Dio, so we're kind of narrowing it down to, well, what else could it be? So it's gonna be Internal Idol here, and
love that album.
This album is all sorts of special. I don't even know how to touch on how they were able to produce such a unique, special album, but it's just something about it. Something about this album is so special. It's hard to even touch on why it's so special, but I don't know. But the album is so special. It is so dynamic. Everything is going on here. With the vocals, the riffs, the kind of the vibe, and everything about it, it's just so special. And Tony Martin is absolutely shining. All the shining. He's absolutely shining all over this album. I just cannot get enough of it. Now, it's still to this day, it just blows me away. And it is one of those things where this album is a super fun factor for me. The riffs are really up going, so there's not much downer doom stuff here as opposed to the previous Aussie era. There's a lot of slower doomier stuff, so this is a lot more up tempo stuff, and it's one of those albums. It just makes me feel fucking great. I put it on. I want to sing along to every song. I ain't hitting the high notes like Tony Martin, but I'm certainly pretending like I am because I want to sing along to everything that's going on here. I absolutely adore this album with all my heart. I could listen to it probably any day of the week, and I'm never going to get sick of it. And without a doubt, I had to put that on my list because it is super fun. If I'm in a bad mood or whatever, I put this on. It's like, it touches me, touches my heart.
I thought for half a second you're gonna put on Born Again, which would be one of my honorable mention picks.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, I mean that Ian Gillan on Born Again, he wailed.
Oh,
and then the vacuum cleaner guitar sound from Tony Iommi, killer. That's what I thought you were gonna put up. But that Tony Martin album, which was his first one, is awesome.
Yeah, great pick. Yeah. It's it's a toss up for me. Which one I like better, that one or Headless Cross, but they're both great to me. They're on par together. Great pick, Jamie.
And it is going back to when we were talking about the Dio era, about how some people checked out and they didn't appreciate anything without Ozzy. And I got to plead with anyone at home watching or whatever, if you did check out even after Dio left, and you're like, oh, I don't even care about the stuff after, I'm pleading with you, please listen to this at least once or twice so you can figure out what's going on here. And you will realize that there's just something really special going on here. Maybe it's just me and my ear that I'm hearing it, but for whatever reason, I just adore this album.
Yeah, that's an amazing album. Thanks for reminding me. I'm gonna have to spin that very soon.
Have you heard the version with Ray Gillan singing lead vocals? I prefer the Tony Martin, but the Ray Gillan version is pretty interesting to hear.
Yes,
he deserves.
Right. I'm glad you did mention that as well, because I know that version is kicking around about the deluxe version where they did release the demos that they originally intended on using the singer for. And I don't have that version. I just have the original one from '87, but I do have that digitally. And originally I did I didn't really care too much about if it was the demo version or the actual album version. I thought they're both great in general, but Tony did get in the studio and spiff up a few things, and either or, the demo or this is both great with both singers. So I'm glad you did mention that as well.
I do prefer the Tony Martin version, though. I think his voice fits Black Sabbath for the mid '80s better than Ray Gillan who was really more of a hard rock singer than more of like a doom metal kind of guy.
Yeah.
He's not really a doom metal guy, but Ray Gillan really rocks. He rocks the hell out of those lyrics too. But Tony's a better fit for Sabbath from the '80s.
Yeah, I agree.
And actually, I don't know how I wound up doing this, but when I was making all my picks, 2-3 days ago, whatever, I was like, I wonder if there's any live material from Tony Martin from this album or from that era, or even the one after Born Again. But so I went on YouTube to see if there was any live material. There's not. There's kind of one really shitty cam material, the shitty cam run, from back in the '80s, really bad quality. But still, even then, throughout the bad audio, you could still hear that he could nail all these notes live. It wasn't just studio magic. He could literally nail all this stuff. I wish there was a professional shot show from this era. That would be great. But still, even the shitty one that's on YouTube that you can find, it's still apparent that this guy could nail all those notes back then. Incredible.
I think actually interesting to know that I think Tony Martin has a new solo album coming out this January, which I definitely want to check out.
Yeah. And cool, it is kind of would typically be the end of a show type thing, and this is one of those things where 5 was really hard to crunch down for me and maybe some other people. So I don't know if you guys were prepared for this, but if anyone has any honorable mentions, Dave Witherall, if you want to go first, if you have any kind of honorable mentions that you want to just rip through.
Yeah, sure. Well, is already mentioned there by Big Dog there. Born Again, amazing album. Yeah, I was almost going to pick that one. Born Again for sure. Jody, if we were talking about Priest, I didn't pick any Priest or Maiden, two of my favorite bands. But for Priest, I'd probably have to go with British Steel, definitely. And Maiden, I'd say Somewhere in Time, probably one of my favorite albums by them. So, yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah, just rip through those if you got any. And then, Jody, do you have any honorable mentions you'd want to rip through?
Uh, I didn't really bring anything because I wasn't expecting to do that. But
Yeah, that's fine. Oh, yeah, yeah. No, it's not like this is a need or anything. I just know, I know me personally. Oh my God, do I ever have honorable mentions here?
Yeah, I had a bunch.
Dave's scrambling. That's fine. Maybe he's going to the washroom. Maybe he's grabbing some albums. So I'm going to riff away with a bunch of my honorable mentions. We'll return back to Dave here. So I'm going to try to rip through these albums and not actually speak on them specifically. The show's been long enough, so I'm just going to rip through some honorable mentions that I wish could have made the cut that didn't. And there is then with these honorable mentions, I tried to get some more heavier, obscure stuff in there. So there's going to be some different stuff in here. But anyway, the first of Warlock, Burning
Nice.
the Witches. We got that. I don't know how this did not get mentioned. Jeff Scott Soto in the first, or I guess it'd be the second Ingve album. He's freaking incredible on this album. I was actually listening to it before. Yeah, incredible. And this might be controversial, but Paul Stanley. I know people
All time.
don't like the 80's Kiss. They only just like 70's Kiss, but
Wow.
Paul Stanley was fucking incredible in the 80's. He touched on super high-pitched kind of powery type metal stuff. And, oh, God, he's great. I would have loved to have got him in my five, but Paul Stanley definitely deserves some credit. He sounded great in the 80's.
I love Gene on
Great album.
I love Gene on that album. Fits Like a Glove is one of my favorite Kiss songs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fits Like a Glove. That's one of the best Kiss songs.
Yeah, one of the best Kiss albums from the 80's. One of the heavier albums, too.
I definitely thought Paul Stanley deserves some credit here. Yeah, he sounded great in the 80's. And then, this was one of the ones that you already picked, so I had that in my own honorable mention, so I don't need to pick that. And Sacrilege, that this didn't get picked, obviously Operation Mindcrime, obviously. And then this is going to be a little different, but Death, Leprosy. So, Death had their first album, Scream Bloody Gore, was kind of pure of a death metal vocal. And a couple albums down the road where he kind of switched out of the pure death metal-esque vocal and he added a little bit of a snarl. I don't know what you call it, but you kind of switched up the pure death metal vocal into a little bit more of a snarl type thing. And these are really cool vocals, even just stepping away from all the instruments and the great guitar work this is a really cool vocals here.
Yeah, that's my favorite Death album.
And obviously Freddie Mercury was a big guy, and I actually really dig this Miracle album. It's not one of their essential classic albums, so to speak. I believe this is 88 or 89, so it's right into that right at the tail end off of the end of the 80's. And Freddie Mercury was full-on great guy, so I definitely would need to bring that up. And I don't have the cover. I ended up losing the cover years ago. And if anyone knows, well, you guys all know about the first Slayer album.
Mm-hmm.
The first Slayer album, Show No Mercy. And you guys know just by listening to it, Tom Murray hits some impressive fucking high notes here. Super, he does these screams for like 10, 20 seconds. Incredible stuff on a few of those tracks. And this is a bit of an odd one. It was hard to narrow it down to what's album specifically because he's doing so much shrieking. But Exciter, I was actually going to pick Long Live the Loud. I might have had that title mixed up, but Long Live the Loud. But after reviewing this one, this Unveiling the Wicked here, 87, 88, I believe, he's just shrieking to unmanageable levels, like almost like shrieking where it's like hurting your eardrums. Like that's how high pitched these shrieks are. If this is not an album anyone watching hasn't listened to it for a while, this is some of the songs are a little more slower jams, than straight speed from the previous albums, but that just gives them more reason to shriek even higher, shriek even more obscure and over the top shrieking there.
Great album.
And Rest in Peace, War Dane. Sanctuary. This guy was an incredible talent here back in the 80s, and this guy could hit any note you'd ever want him to. If you know, if anyone watching is not familiar with Sanctuary, get on it. Fate's Warning here. Did I grab the right one? Yeah, Awaken the Guardian. Actually, I meant to grab Spectre, the Spectre one. I actually prefer the Spectre album, but I guess I ended up grabbing this album. Fate's Warning. Does it say the? Yeah, it shows the band there. Fate's Warning at the top. Anyway, great album. Super high pitched vocals with some kind of powery type stuff from the 80s. Really cool stuff. A couple and some obscure stuff. Well, this one's not obscure, but Forbidden Evil. Incredible engaging vocals on here. Incredible artwork too. These ones are a little obscure. Is Sacred Oath, Crystal Vision from 1987. Great vocalist, super high pitched, super talented guy. I believe Rob Thorne is his name. And my last one, I would have, I gave it away, but I would have loved to have fit this in my 5. Again, only being 5. With only being 5, you only get 5 to choose from. So I would have loved to have fit this Betsy album in here. Oh my God, she is incredible on this album. And if anyone's not super familiar, it's Bitch, the band Bitch.
Yep.
And the record label wanted them to just basically get some hits and more popular, so it's less heavy, so to speak, and it just kind of just gives a chance for Betsy to shine, really shine with these vocals. Every song on here is like an anthemic hit, or not a hit, but just an anthemic songs, and she is just incredible on this album. Love this album too. This is almost up there with some of those Steve Grimmett albums for me, and some of the other albums that did make my list. And yeah, this Betsy's right up here. Super fun time, and she is incredible on this album. Spunky, she's full of spunk and attitude, and beautiful. And that was my honorable mentions.
Nice. Some good picks there.
I got a couple. No one rarely mentioned Striper.
That
guy built it out. Mr. Sweet, Michael Sweet. This is
great album.
The classic To Hell with the Devil. It's got awesome tracks on it. Of course, the title track, Free, Honestly, The Way, Sing Along. I mean, they play all these in concert. I saw them a couple years ago, and they were awesome. They actually got a Bible. They threw me a Bible. I held up a sign from Michael Sweet, and he was like squinting. He's like, "What does that say?" And he's like, "Should I throw him a Bible?" And winged it out to me, and I caught it, and I still have it. I don't know where it is. Actually, it's right here. There it is. There's the Bible I caught.
Cool.
The New Testament.
That's pretty damn cool.
And they used to just throw those out in the crowd?
Yeah, he just throws them out. I held up the sign. Actually, the sign said "Bible me, bro," in the Striper, the yellow and black.
Yeah.
And he was like, it was kind of small. It was like this big, and he's squinting. He's like, "What does that say?" And he's like, "Oh." And he grabs the Bible and he throws it across the concert hall, and I catch it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What kind of stuff's in like inside the book, like the words? Is it
actual Bible?
Oh right. Oh wow.
It's the New Testament. It's all there.
Nice.
Yeah, it's actual New Testament. It's all in there. It's not, it's a real Bible. They really kind of practice what they preach. They're really
Yep. Great pick and Striper. Love them.
And my other pick, not a lot of people know about these guys, Sheriff, with Freddie Kersey on vocals. This is the highest falsetto I've ever heard in my entire life. The highest. You got to listen to a song. The song, second track off this album is called California. He hits notes that I didn't even know existed. So that's why I have this as an honorable mention. I think they only had this one album. It was a one-off band, and but definitely it's very AOR, but the notes that he hits blows my mind. And my last one, honorable mention, and I don't know why anybody didn't bring this up, but the Keeper albums, Michael Kiske. The guy is amazing. He could sing anything. He could sing the telephone book, and I would listen. That's how good he is. And the new Halloween album, we've talked about it before. It's like a 10 out of 10. It was brilliant. It's probably the best album of 2021. And
nice. Yeah, it is a good album.
Halloween's back. And then my second favorite pick of 2021 would be the new Exodus album.
The new what?
The new Exodus album, Persona Non Grata.
Yeah, good album.
Plays. Yeah. Pun intended.
I figured Halloween would make its way somewhere in this conversation. I kind of just figured it would at some point. So that is cool. You did mention the Halloween. Yeah, I know I'm personally probably a bit more Andy Darius fan, but obviously these classic Halloweens can do no wrong. So yeah. One honorable mention I forgot I had in my stack, but I was going to take a picture for the group or something. But I did want to bring up Heir Apparent. I'll try to get it in close if people don't know, but trying to get this Heir Apparent in there. Super talented vocalist, high pitchy type stuff. If nobody's familiar with it, give Heir Apparent a chance. And I believe this is 1985, 86-ish. I'm not 100% sure on the year. I did just kind of ripped that off the top of my head. I think that's 85, 86. So really cool kind of mid-80s heavy metal, power metal, so to speak. High-pitched vocalist, super talented, or else I wouldn't even show him. So he's obviously is a talented vocalist. So give that a shot if you're looking for something different. And there we go. I think that pretty well wraps up the show. Everyone said what they need to say. And, thanks everyone for watching. Subscribe. Mosh. See you later.